Mom, please make and stop giving me those pills. My son whispered, his face as white as a sheet. I thought they were just vitamins until the doctor turned pale looking at the blood work. My own sister was poisoning my child, and my parents were covering for her just to declare him unfit and steal my house. Listen until the end to find out how I turned their perfect plan into their worst nightmare. My name is Elena Vance. I'm 41, a single mother, and I had just touched down in Denver after a grueling 4-day business trip to Chicago. I hauled my suitcase through the front door of our suburban home in Aurora on a Friday evening, just after 6. The moment the door clicked shut, my 9-year-old son, Toby, came running. His face was as white as a sheet. He grabbed my sleeve, his voice a terrified whisper. Mom, please, can I stop taking the pills and Julianne makes me swallow. They make me sick and I just sleep all day. Before I could even process his words, Julianne stepped out of the kitchen, her arms crossed and a manufactured smile plastered on her face. He's just being dramatic, Elle. They're custom vitamins. High-quality stuff. My mother reached over and stroked Toby's hair with a practiced rhythm. Listen to your aunt, sweetheart. She only wants what's best for you. My father offered a curt nod from his armchair, his eyes never leaving the television. He's lucky to have family here. You're gone half the month as it is. All three of them exchanged a quick, knowing glance, a look I had caught them sharing too often lately. Toby squeezed my hand so hard his knuckles turned white. That night, once the house had finally settled into an uneasy silence, I crept into Julianne's room. On the top shelf, buried behind a stack of sweaters, I found it. A small white bottle with no label, just a strip of masking tape with the word vitamins scrawled in her handwriting. I twisted the cap. The scent that hit me was sharp, synthetic, and unmistakably medicinal. The realization chilled my blood. I spent the rest of the night in Toby's room, sitting on the floor with my back against the door, holding him while he drifted into a heavy, unnatural sleep. Every time he shifted, I checked his pulse. By 5:30 in the morning, I couldn't wait any longer. I woke him gently, told him we were going for an early checkup, and carried his limp, half-asleep body to the car. 20 minutes later, we pulled into the emergency bay at the University of Colorado Medical Center. Dr. Miller took one look at Toby's pale eyelids and slurred, heavy speech and immediately ordered a stat toxicology screen. She didn't waste time with small talk. They wheeled him into a pediatric observation room. I paced the sterile hallway, the unlabeled bottle weighed down my coat pocket like a lead weight. 3 agonizing hours passed. Finally, Dr. Miller called me into her office, shut the door, and slid a lab report across the desk. The numbers were staggering. Diphenhydramine levels at 2,400 nanograms per milliliter, she said, her voice flat and serious. I won't sugarcoat this, Elena. That is 7 times the upper limit for a healthy adult. In a 9-year-old, repeated doses at this concentration can cause permanent cognitive damage, impacting memory, attention, and processing speed. She paused, her gaze hardening. Someone has been heavily sedating your son with adult-strength medication. My legs gave out, and I collapsed into a chair. Dr. Miller didn't hesitate. She picked up the phone and contacted Child Protective Services and hospital security. Within minutes, a social worker and a county deputy were in the room. I handed over the bottle. The deputy photographed the evidence while the social worker explained that Toby would need to remain hospitalized for monitoring, and a full toxicology panel to determine the exact duration of the exposure. I managed to photograph every piece of paperwork before the authorities took the originals. Dr. Miller slipped me a duplicate summary. Keep this safe, she whispered. You're going to need it. The drive back to Aurora felt like moving through deep water. I walked into the house just after 3 in the afternoon. Julianne was sprawled on the sofa, mindlessly scrolling through her phone. My mother was folding laundry, and my father was watching a sports replay. I dropped my keys on the granite counter with a loud thud, walked to the coffee table, and placed the lab report face up. Julianne sat up slowly. My mother froze. My father muted the TV. Julianne reached for the paper first. As her eyes scanned the results, the color drained from her skin. My father snatched it next, scowling as if he were trying to decipher a foreign language. Lab error, he muttered. These things happen all the time. My mother moved to Julianne's side, placing a hand on her shoulder. Honey, you were only trying to help the boy rest. Doctors always blow these things out of proportion. Julianne's voice cracked as she looked at me. It was just a stronger vitamin, L. You're overreacting. I kept my voice cold and level. CPS is already involved. The police have the bottle. This isn't something you can talk your way out of. A heavy silence fell over the room. Then my father leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Are you really willing to destroy your own family over a simple misunderstanding? He asked. My mother's grip on Julianne tightened. Think about Toby. All this stress and legal drama won't be good for him. Julianne wiped her eyes, but I saw the cold calculation returning to her gaze. My father glanced at my mother and gave a microscopic shake of his head, a signal to stay quiet. I turned and walked upstairs without another word. Behind me, I heard my father's low whisper. Let it blow over. She'll calm down. I locked my bedroom door and didn't stop until every photo and document was backed up to a secure cloud drive. On Sunday morning, the three of them left for their weekly bulk buy grocery run, Dad behind the wheel, Mom in the passenger seat, and Julianne in the back with her stack of reusable bags. I waited until their SUV cleared the corner of 17th Avenue, then I moved. I had paid a premium for same-day pickup at an electronics store across town. I returned with 4 discreet security cameras, matte white and no larger than hockey pucks, designed to vanish against the ceiling. I grabbed the ladder from the garage and worked in a feverish silence. The first unit went into the basement ceiling, positioned directly above the old leather sofa to cover the entire recreation area. The second I tucked into a corner joist near the small refrigerator, angled to catch the stairs and the entryway. The third went high into the living room's crown molding, aimed at the front door and the hallway. The fourth I placed in the upstairs hall, perfectly situated to monitor every bedroom door and the top of the staircase. 10 minutes for each. No wires, no blinking status lights, and a battery life that promised months of surveillance. I paired them to a brand new account, choosing a password known only to me. I locked my bedroom door and spent the night in a state of cold, calculated wakefulness, uploading every photo and document to a secure cloud drive. On Sunday morning, the three of them left for their routine trip to the warehouse club, my father behind the wheel, my mother in the passenger seat, and Julianne in the back clutching her reusable grocery bags. As soon as their SUV cleared the end of the block, I moved. I had paid for same-day pickup for 4 wireless security cameras at a shop across town. They were small, matte white, and no larger than a hockey puck, designed to vanish against a ceiling. I hauled the ladder from the garage and worked and enabled motion alerts with 24-hour cloud recording. By the time I heard the garage door rumble open in a fever of silent efficiency. The first unit went into the basement ceiling, positioned directly above the worn leather sofa to cover the entire recreation area. The second I tucked into a corner joist near the small fridge, capturing the stairs and the entryway. The third went high into the crown molding of the living room, aimed at the front door and the hallway beyond. Every camera was live and invisible. Monday morning, I dropped Toby off at school, kissed the top of his head, and drove into the city to my office in the business district, pretending nothing had changed. At 9 o'clock. The fourth was placed in the upstairs hall, perfectly angled to monitor every bedroom door. 10 minutes for each. No wires, no blinking status lights. I paired them to a brand new encrypted account, changed the password to A3 AM, my phone vibrated in my pocket. A motion alert for the front door. Julianne, still dressed in pajama shorts and one of my old university hoodies, opened the door for a man I had never seen string of random characters and enabled motion alerts. By the time I heard the garage door rumble open, every camera was live and invisible. On Monday, I dropped Toby off at Willow Creek Elementary, kissed the top of his head, and drove into lower downtown Denver as if nothing had changed. At 9:03, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Before. He was dark-haired, wearing a navy pea coat, and carrying 2 paper cups from a local coffee shop on Ridge Road. She took the coffee, kissed him deeply right there on the porch, and pulled him inside. They disappeared down the basement, motion alert from the front door. Julianne, dressed in pajama shorts and one of my old university hoodies, opened the door stairs. I switched the feed on my second monitor. The basement camera caught everything in high definition. Julianne set for a man I had never seen before. He had dark, swept-back hair and wore a navy wool coat. The coffee's down, pushed him gently onto the sofa, and climbed into his lap. They moved with a familiarity that suggested this wasn't the first time. He laughed softly as she whispered something into his ear. She tugged his coat off, letting it hit the floor, and reached for a remote to turn on the string of decorative lights she had hung the month before. The carrying 2 paper cups from a coffee shop on the corner. She took the coffee, kissed him with a desperate intensity right there on the porch, and pulled him inside. They disappeared down the basement stairs. I switched the feed. The basement camera rendered the scene in sharp detail. Julianne set the coffees down, pushed him gently onto the sofa, and warm glow made the entire scene look staged and intimate. At one point, she glanced up toward the ceiling, directly toward the lens she had no idea was there, and smirked before burying her face in his neck again. Tuesday, he arrived and climbed into his lap. They moved with the familiarity of people who had been waiting weeks for this moment. He laughed at 10:41. Same coffee, same routine. This time, she had music playing, an indie playlist she knew, something she whispered in his ear. She tugged his coat off, let it heap onto the floor, and reached for I found grating. They danced slowly in the middle of the rug, barefoot, with wine glasses already in their hands. Wednesday, he showed up at noon with takeout. They ate cross-legged on the floor, feeding each other between remote to turn on the string lights she had hung the month before. The soft glow made the scene look staged, kisses and laughing at private jokes I couldn't yet hear. Thursday, he walked in at 9:29 carrying a small black duffel bag. Julianne locked the front door behind him, took the bag, and led him straight intimate and practiced. She glanced up once, directly toward the ceiling, toward the lens she had no idea was there. She smirked, a look of pure, chilling triumph, before burying her face in his neck. On Tuesday, he arrived downstairs. The bag remained there for the rest of the day. Every morning, I sat at my standing desk at 10:40. Same coffee, same route, straight to the basement. This time, she had music playing, an indie playlist she knew I detested. They danced slowly in the middle of the rug, barefoot, with wine glasses already in, staring at marketing decks I wasn't actually reading, while my home was being used like a cheap hotel. I saved every clip to an encrypted folder, time-stamped and organized by date. My pulse never settled. I drank coffee I couldn't taste and answered messages with one hand while refreshing the live feeds with the other. By Thursday night, I had over 30 their hands. By Wednesday, he showed up at noon with takeout from a Thai place. They ate cross-legged on the floor, feeding each other between kisses, and laughing at private jokes I couldn't yet hear. On Thursday, he hours of footage. I still didn't have clear audio of their conversations, but the pattern was undeniable. The house belonged to them. Walked in at 9:30 carrying a small black duffel bag. Julianne locked the front door behind him, and led him downstairs. The bag remained in the basement the entire day. Every morning, I sat at my desk in the city the second my car pulled out of the driveway. I left the office early on Friday. The Colorado rain was coming down in gray sheets. I didn't go inside. Instead, I parked 3 blocks away under the heavy, dripping branches of A, pretending to review project proposals while my second monitor showed my own home being used like a rented hotel suite. I saved every cedar tree. I cracked the window for air and opened my laptop on the steering wheel, watching the basement feed. The rain hammered the roof of the car, a rhythmic drumming that masked the cold dread in my chest. At 8:1 clip to an encrypted folder, time-stamped and titled by date. My pulse never slowed. I drank coffee I couldn't taste. I answered messages with one hand while refreshing the live feed with the other. By Thursday night, I had over 30 hours of footage. 7 a.m., the man, Liam, walked in carrying the usual coffee and a small paper bag. Julie and I didn't have clear audio of their endgame yet, but the pattern was undeniable. The house belonged to them the second my car left the driveway. I left the office early on Friday. I didn't go inside. I met him at the door wearing nothing but an oversized flannel shirt of mine. She pulled him straight to the basement. I switched to the wide-angle view. She set the coffees on a trunk, flicked on the lights, and pushed him onto the couch. He laughed. "Your sister is definitely gone until 6 at the earliest," she said, climbing onto his lap. "We have the whole day." She kissed him slowly, then pulled back just enough for 3 blocks away under the heavy, dripping boughs of a maple tree. The cold autumn rain hammered against the roof of the car, trying to drown out the reality of what was coming. I cracked the window for air and opened my laptop on the steering wheel. At 8:17, the man, Nathan, walked in carrying the usual coffee and the microphone to catch every word. "Everything is on track, babe. Toby failed another spelling test last week. His teacher already emailed me about potential cognitive delays. Another month of this dosage, and no doctor is going to question a developmental diagnosis." Liam traced the silver chain around her neck. And then, Julianne replied, "Small paper bag." Julianne met him at the door wearing nothing but an oversized flannel shirt. It was my shirt. She pulled him straight to the basement. I switched to the wide-angle feed and turned the volume to maximum. She flicked on the string lights and pushed him onto the couch. He laughed, pulling her close. "Your sister is definitely gone," her voice chillingly casual. "Mom and Dad file for guardianship of a cognitively impaired minor. The law is clear: if the parent is deemed unfit due to absenteeism and the child has special needs, the court almost always awards custody to the until 6 at the earliest," she said, her voice clear and dripping with a confidence that made my skin crawl. "We have the whole day." She kissed him slowly, then pulled back just enough for the microphone to catch every syllable. "Everything, family members who are actually present. Once they control Toby, they control the trust. Half the equity in this house came from his father's life insurance. That money was meant for his future, and as guardians, they get to decide exactly what care looks like." She smiled as if she were discussing a vacation itinerary. "We liquidate the assets, pay off the is on track, babe. Toby failed another spelling test last week. His teacher already emailed me about potential cognitive processing issues. Another month of this dosage, and no pediatrician in the state will question a diagnosis of permanent developmental delay." Nathan traced the silver chain around her neck, a piece of jewelry I had never seen before. "And then?" he asked, his voice low. "And then," Julianne said, "Mom and Dad file for emergency guardianship. The law here is straightforward: if a parent is deemed unfit due to chronic absenteeism, and the child has documented special needs, the court almost always favors the relatives providing the actual daily care. Once they have legal control over Toby, they have control over the trust." She leaned back, a cold, predatory smile spreading across her face. "Half the equity in this house came from his father's life insurance settlement. That money was specifically earmarked for Toby's long-term care. As his guardians, they get to define what that care looks like. We liquidate the house, settle the $70,000 hole Dad dug himself into with that failed real estate venture in New Mexico, give the old man and Mom a comfortable cushion, and the rest belongs to us. Elena can keep her career and her suitcases." Nathan raised an eyebrow, a look of impressed disbelief on his face. "Your parents are really that desperate?" "Dad is. And Mom has always chosen me anyway. They've been dropping hints for months about how unfair it is that I'm struggling," while Elena walked away with the house in the divorce settlement. She reached for her phone. My banking app was still logged in on her device because I had trusted her with a secondary card for household expenses. She turned the screen toward him. $4,200 at a boutique jeweler in Cherry Creek. A Tudor Black Bay. Happy birthday, baby. He kissed her with a sudden, violent intensity that made the sofa creak. "You're insane." "I love it." Julianne laughed against his mouth. "Just wait until escrow closes." I sat in the dark car, the rain streaking the windshield in jagged lines, replaying the clip 3 times to ensure I hadn't hallucinated the words. Every syllable was crystal clear. I screen recorded the entire conversation, and immediately dug into my transaction history. The charge had posted on Wednesday afternoon. A notification had been sent to an old email account I hadn't checked in months, the one still linked to the card because I'd never bothered to update the settings. Later that night, long after Toby had finally fallen into his heavy, medicated sleep, the hallway camera caught my parents in the kitchen. They thought the house was asleep. My father poured 2 fingers of bourbon, his voice a gravelly whisper. "As soon as the neuropsychological report is finalized, we file the petition. I've already consulted an attorney in Boulder. Elena travels too much, she works too much. It's a textbook case of neglect. The judge will side with the family." My mother nodded, twisting her wedding ring nervously. "Julianne deserves this house more anyway. She's the one who's been here every single day." My father clinked his glass against hers. "To new beginnings." I saved that clip as well, labeling it with the date and time before adding it to the encrypted drive. My hands were ice cold but steady for the first time all week. On Saturday afternoon, I walked through the front door at exactly 3:07. The scent of garlic and simmering oregano hit me immediately. My mother stood at the stove, stirring a pot of marinara sauce. My father was at the kitchen island, slicing a loaf of ciabatta for garlic bread. From the basement, I could hear the muffled thump of music and Julianne's unmistakable, sharp laugh. I dropped my bag on the entryway bench, kicked off my shoes, and pulled my phone from my pocket. With one tap, I bypassed the local settings and pushed the audio to the integrated home speaker system I had synced with the cameras earlier that morning. Julianne's voice suddenly boomed through every room in the house, loud and distorted. "The court approves the sale for care purposes. Dad pays off his debts. Mom gets her travel fund, and we walk away with the rest." The wooden spoon clattered into the pot. My mother spun around, red sauce splattering across the backsplash like blood. My father's knife froze midair. Heavy footsteps pounded up the basement stairs. Julian burst into the kitchen first, Nathan trailing half a step behind her, his shirt untucked and his face flushed. She saw the phone in my hand, and the color drained from her face until she looked as ghostly as Toby had. My father recovered first, his face darkening with rage. "Turn that off right now." My mother's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and shame. "Elena, you recorded your own family." I didn't move. I didn't blink. The audio shifted to the midnight recording, my father's bourbon-soaked toast about guardianship and my mother's quiet, devastating agreement. Every word echoed off the vaulted ceiling, stripping away the lies they had lived behind for months. Every syllable of the recording echoed off the vaulted ceiling, stripping away the last of their pretenses. Julianne lunged for the phone, her face twisted in a mask of desperation. I lifted it high above my head, my pulse steady with a cold, hard clarity. "Touch me, and this goes straight to the Adams County Sheriff," I warned. Nathan shifted toward the back door, his eyes darting like a trapped animal's. Julianne grabbed his wrist, her nails digging into his skin. "You are not leaving me here to face this alone," she hissed. My father's face turned a bruised shade of purple. He took a step toward me, his voice a low growl. "You have no right to spy on us in our own home." "This is my house," I said, my voice low and lethal. "My name is the only one on the deed. My son is the person you've been poisoning. My life is what you were planning to sell." My mother began to sob, great, theatrical heaves of breath that no longer moved me. "We were only trying to secure everyone's future, Elena. We did it for the family." "You're never here." Julianne's voice cracked as she screamed. "I've been the one raising him while you're off chasing promotions in Chicago. I earned this." My father slammed the bread knife onto the island, the vibration rattling the plates. "You call the police and you destroy 4 lives. Think about Toby. You want him taken away by strangers while you're tied up in a courtroom." I met his stare, refusing to flinch. "I am thinking about Toby. That's why this ends right now." Nathan tried to pull away again, his voice a panicked whisper. "Julianne, I really think we should." She whipped around, her grip tightening until her knuckles were white. "We're in this together. You promised." He looked at me, then at the floor, and took one slow, cowardly step back. My mother moved between us, her arms spread like a shield. "Elena, baby, we're blood. Let's just talk this out. Nobody has to get hurt." I let out a short, sharp laugh that held no humor. Blood doesn't drug a 9-year-old for profit. My father took a threatening step forward, his shadow looming over the kitchen island. "You report this and we'll fight you in court for years. We'll say you fabricated the whole thing. Who do you think a judge will believe? Grandparents who've been here every day, or a mother who's gone half the month?" Julianne's eyes narrowed, the tears vanishing in an instant. "And when they dig into your travel logs, your overtime, your nanny cancellations, good luck keeping custody." My mother nodded through her sniffles. "We only want what's best for the boy, Elena." I looked at the 3 people who had raised me, the people who had shared every holiday and every milestone, and I felt the final thread of our connection snap. "You want what's best for yourselves," I said. "And you just confessed to it on camera." My father's fists clenched. "You'll regret this." My mother collapsed into a chair, wailing. "My own daughter, how could you? This house should have been mine anyway." Julianne screamed. Nathan finally broke free from her grip and bolted for the back door. The screen door slammed behind him with a sharp crack. I raised the phone, ended the recording, and dialed 911 right in front of them. 911, what is your emergency?" I kept my eyes locked on my father. "I need officers and child protective services at 1427 Aspen Court in Aurora. My son has been systematically poisoned by relatives attempting to defraud him of his inheritance. I have audio and video evidence of the conspiracy." Julianne lunged again. My father caught her arm this time, dragging her back. The dispatcher stayed calm, her voice a thin wire of sanity in the room. "Units are en route, ma'am. Stay on the line." I hung up only when I heard the first sirens wailing 2 blocks away. The patrol car rolled up 11 minutes later, its lights cutting through the gray Colorado drizzle. A second unit followed, then an unmarked sedan. 2 officers stepped onto the porch while the social worker stayed back, already taking notes. I met them at the door, a USB drive already in my hand. I was still recording everything on my phone. I walked the lead officer, Sergeant Lawson, straight into the living room. My father stood rigid by the sofa, my mother was a heap of damp tissues. Julianne paced like a caged predator, her mascara streaking her face. There are 27 video files and 11 audio recordings, all time-stamped, I said, handing over the drive. Child endangerment, conspiracy to commit guardianship fraud, and attempted theft from a minor's trust. Everything you need is on here. Lawson plugged the drive into his tablet. The Thursday clip started playing on the large television I had synced to the network. Julianne's voice boomed through the room, discussing the liquidation of the house. My father reached for the remote, but the second officer stepped into his path without a word. The social worker, Ms. Sterling, knelt beside Toby, who had wandered downstairs clutching a worn stuffed wolf. She spoke softly, asking him simple questions. "Aunt Julianne makes me take the white pills when Mom's gone," he whispered, his voice small and fragile. "They make my head feel fuzzy." Ms. Sterling's face hardened. She stood up. "We're transporting the minor for an immediate medical evaluation. The university hospital has a bed ready." Julianne let out a piercing scream. "You can't take him." Lawson began to read Julianne her rights. She wasn't running, but she was shaking with a feral, helpless rage. My father tried to argue jurisdiction, his voice booming and empty. My mother just sobbed into her hands. I signed the emergency safety plan on the spot. Toby hugged me tight, his small body trembling. "Are you coming with me?" he whispered. "Every second, buddy." While the officers secured the scene, I pulled the deed to the house from my office drawer. It was dated 2019, my name only. I showed it to Lawson. "This property is solely mine. I am exercising my legal right to revoke residency privileges for Margaret, Edward, and Julianne Vance, effective immediately." My father's mouth opened and closed, but for the first time in my life, he had nothing to say. "We'll stand by while they collect their essentials," Lawson said. "They have 24 hours to vacate the premises completely. After that, it's trespassing." Ms. Sterling took Toby by the hand. I grabbed his overnight bag and followed them to the car. Julianne tried to run after us, but an officer gently but firmly blocked her path. Her scream echoed down the street as we pulled away into the rain. At the hospital, they drew fresh blood and ran a comprehensive toxicology panel before admitting Toby to the pediatric wing for observation. By 9 that night, an on-call judge had signed the emergency protective order via video link. It mandated zero contact between Toby and the 3 named adults for a minimum of 72 hours, with a formal review scheduled within 5 days, a hearing that would likely extend the order to 5 years with an automatic renewal clause if the risk persisted. I sat in the stiff vinyl chair beside Toby's bed, holding his small hand while he slept under a heap of warm blankets. For the first time in weeks, his rest wasn't a product of a chemical fog. A nurse eventually brought me a blanket of my own. I wrapped it around my shoulders and watched the monitor, its steady, rhythmic beeping serving as a heartbeat for the house I had finally reclaimed. Back in Aurora, the officers stood watch while the packing began. My father carried out 2 suitcases in a heavy, brooding silence. My mother followed with a laundry basket overflowing with clothes, her eyes swollen and red. Julianne resisted at first, sitting on the basement sofa and screaming that the house was hers by right. Eventually, the officers made it clear, she could leave on her own feet or in handcuffs. She finally left with a single duffel bag and her purse, slamming the front door so hard the glass in the entryway windows rattled. By midnight, the house was empty. The only thing that remained was the faint, lingering scent of garlic in the kitchen, and a profound quiet I hadn't known in months. The next morning, before Toby was discharged, I had every lock in the house replaced. The emergency hearing took place in courtroom 4 of the Adams County Justice Center. I walked in with my attorney, Sarah Jenkins, at my side. Toby gripped my hand tightly as we navigated the hallway. The courtroom smelled of lemon polish and old wood. Julianne sat at the respondent's table, flanked by a public defender who looked barely out of law school. My parents sat directly behind her in the gallery, dressed in dark clothes as if attending a funeral. Judge Evelyn Thorne entered the room, her silver hair pulled back in a sharp knot, her black robes rustling. She was a woman who wasted no time. "This is a review of the Emergency Protective Custody Order," she announced. "Ms. Jenkins, you may proceed." Sarah stood and addressed the bench. "Your Honor, we are requesting a continuation of the emergency order, its conversion into a 5-year permanent restraining order, and civil damages for the intentional infliction of emotional distress and medical endangerment." She clicked a remote, and the large monitors in the courtroom flickered to life. Julianne's voice, cold and clinical, filled the room. "Once they are appointed as conservators, the house is the primary asset. We liquidate." The public defender raised a weak objection regarding the chain of custody for the digital files. Judge Thorne overruled him instantly. "I have reviewed the forensic report from the county's digital unit," the judge said. "The chain is intact." Next came the midnight recording from the kitchen, my father's bourbon-soaked toast to new beginnings. My mother covered her face with her hands. My father stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched so tight a muscle in his cheek ticked. Sarah then called Dr. Miller to the stand. The doctor laid out the toxicology findings, detailing the projected long-term cognitive risks. She stated flatly that this was the deliberate, repeated administration of a controlled substance to a minor without any medical justification. Under Colorado law, it was a textbook definition of child abuse. The defense tried to paint me as an absentee parent, citing my travel schedule. Sarah countered immediately with my detailed childcare contracts, my flight logs, and Toby's perfect school attendance record, at least until the poisoning began. Julianne took the stand last. She wept, claiming the pills were merely herbal sleep aids, and insisting she only wanted to help a restless child. The judge leaned forward, her gaze piercing. If they were harmless aids, why was there no label, no dosage instruction, and no prescription record? Julianne had no answer. My parents refused to testify after the judge warned them about the penalties for perjury. Their silence was more damning than any confession. Judge Thorne returned after a 20-minute recess. The court finds clear and convincing evidence of an immediate and ongoing danger to the child's physical and emotional welfare. The emergency order is hereby converted to a permanent protective order. Julianne, Margaret, and Edward Mercer are prohibited from any contact with Toby Mercer for a period of 5 years, renewable automatically upon a showing of continued risk. She didn't stop there. A civil judgment is entered against Julianne Mercer in the amount of $48,000 for medical expenses, therapy, and pain and suffering. The state will continue its parallel criminal investigation. She banged the gavel with a finality that made the whole room jump. Julianne collapsed forward, sobbing into her arms. My mother reached out for her, then hesitated and sat back down. My father just continued to stare at the floor. As we walked out into the hallway, Toby hugged my leg. "Are we safe now, Mom?" I knelt down and looked him directly in the eyes. "Completely, Toby. Completely." 1 week later, the preschool where Julianne had worked for 6 years received the official substantiation letter from Child Protective Services. State law required the immediate termination of any employee with a founded finding of child abuse. Her personnel file was flagged permanently. No licensed childcare center in the state would ever hire her again. I filed the paperwork for the civil judgment the same day. The collection process was set to begin in 30 days. October sunlight poured through the new skylight I had installed in the upstairs hallway, the one Toby picked out himself from a catalog. He turned 10 last month. There were 10 candles on a chocolate cake shaped like a mountain range, and he blew them all out in a single, confident breath. His cheeks were pink, his eyes bright and clear, with no trace of the heavy fog that used to cloud them. From the street, our house looks exactly the same as any other in this quiet Aurora suburb, but inside, everything has changed. There is fresh paint in soft blues and sage greens. There are new locks, a modern alarm system, and a discreet doorbell camera. The trust one established for Toby is now irrevocable, until he reaches his 18th birthday. The equity from his father's life insurance, which once sat vulnerable in our shared lives, is now safely guarded, managed by a professional fiduciary I vetted myself. No relative, no court, and no outsider can touch a single penny without my signature and a judge's approval. Julianne lives in a 400-square-foot studio apartment off a noisy stretch of Colfax Avenue. It's the kind of place where the walls are paper-thin, and the parking lot perpetually smells of old fryer grease. The civil judgment hangs over her like a permanent storm cloud, $48,000, plus accruing interest. Wage garnishment began months ago. 15% of every paycheck she earns vanishes before she even sees it. Her childcare license was revoked for life. She spends her nights stocking shelves at a 24-hour grocery store in a neighboring town, wearing a name tag that simply reads, Jules, because the full version of her name still reminds people of the local news articles. My parents rent a one-bedroom unit in a bleak senior complex that accepts government housing vouchers. My father had to sell his beloved truck just to cover the first month's rent and the security deposit. My mother's bridge club stopped calling a long time ago. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that they keep the thermostat at 62 degrees all winter to save on the utility bill. They never ask about Toby. I never offer updates. Some Sundays, I drive Toby up into the foothills. We hike through the trails even when the air is biting and cold, hunting for interesting stones or watching for elk. We eat hot chili at a local diner and talk for hours. He is a constant stream of conversation now, telling me about soccer tryouts, his science projects, and the elaborate Lego structures he builds in his room. His fourth-grade teacher sent home a note last week, remarking on his incredible improvement in focus and self-esteem. I keep that note on the refrigerator, pinned right next to his latest A+ spelling test. People sometimes ask if I miss them, my own parents, my only sister. The answer is a quiet, steady truth: I miss the idea of them. I miss the version of a family that existed before greed and resentment turned them into strangers. But the people who sat in my kitchen plotting to sedate my child for a payout were never really family. Blood doesn't buy loyalty, and it certainly doesn't excuse a betrayal this deep. If you ever feel that knot in your stomach because something in your own home feels wrong, listen to it. Document everything. Protect your children first and ask the difficult questions later. Those closest to you are often the ones capable of the deepest cuts, and the law can't easily repair a childhood that has been stolen. Toby and I are building a new normal, just the two of us. Our own rules, our own laughter, our own home. Some nights he still crawls into my bed after a bad dream. I hold him close until his breathing evens out and becomes a soft, steady rhythm. Then I stare at the ceiling and remind myself that we made it through the worst of the storm. The rest is just living.